Invite up the beautiful Judy Defino to say a blessing for everyone.
I would let Joe's dad do this, but it might take too long, right? If you gave a blessing, right? I'd be just kidding. Name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Thank you, everybody who came here. Thank you for everyone who's home, but could not make it. Bless them. We thank God for getting Joe here, our miracle man. And I just want him to appreciate this day. I want him to know how loved he is, which I think he does. And I can't even tell you how much your prayers and thoughts have helped us. So thank you, everyone.
And now, why don't we just invite Mr. Defino up here right now. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Joseph Defino. And Joe gets to become part of the steel chair posse today, Joe. And helping us out, please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for... You can call him Cactus Jack, you can call him Mankind, you can call him Mick Foley, New York Times best-selling author. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mick Foley! All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move this along very quickly because we are here to hang out and have a really great time. But we're going to start with talking about what is the Rocky Soulman Johnson Medal of Mettle. Rocky Soulman Johnson was the first professional wrestler to join the Board of Trustees of the International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. He then passed away, unfortunately, on January 15th of 2020. Joe and I were very good friends of Rocky Soulman Johnson. And it kind of happened because Joe was friends with Mick Foley. If I back up, I met Joe the first time when he was a teacher. Even though we'd worked together for years and he coached, we didn't work in the same building. So one day Joe sent a child to my office to interview me as being the new principal of Morse Elementary. And because this kid didn't write so fast, I took over and I wrote the answers and I sent the child back to his class. Mr. Defino came to my office irate. He wanted those children to do the work, so he let me know that. He then sent the children back, and now they had different questions, and one question that was asked was, well, who's your favorite author? And I answered, honestly, my favorite author is Mick Foley. I still didn't know Joe that well. 10 minutes later, he stormed into my office and wanted to know. He commanded, who told you? I said, what are you talking about? Who told you? I didn't know what he was talking about. Who told you I know Mick Foley? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. So fast forward a few years later, we had this crazy idea to build a playground one time. It's an awesome playground which still exists to this day. It's got a castle, it's got a pirate ship, it's awesome. So Joe had an idea to have a dodgeball tournament to raise money for a playground. And he didn't tell me, but he invited Cactus Jack to be he was just coming to sign autographs, but then Mick Foley stayed for over 4.5 hours and did color commentary on a dodgeball tournament. This video is out there, folks. It's awesome. So Joe and I wanted to do things to pay Mick back. And along with Kevin McLaren and a few other people, we went on a journey to wanting to thank Mick Foley for helping us build a playground. And that led us down to WrestleMania Access, where Joe used our elementary school newspaper to get media rights to WrestleMania. And there was Greg Wachtel was there as well. His son Jay walked in, and we got to interview the first wrestler we saw, and it was a guy named Claudio Castagnoli.
Cesaro.
It's Antonio Cesaro. So there's a great video out there with this. Then we walked through the door, and there was a brand new group that was there that no one knew, but I said, Joe, these guys are big. And it was The Shield. And so we interviewed Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose. We then spent our day walking around Giants Stadium doing as many interviews as possible. I do still regret that we didn't interview Harley Race because we had to finally leave to get over to Madison Square Garden. Now, careful. If anybody gets out of line, you're getting a dodgeball thrown at you. So, Joe and I, wanting to put a capstone on all of this, wanted to get Dominic DeNucci to make a comment. And so we found out Dominic DeNucci was going to be in Amsterdam, New York, and so we went out to Amsterdam to capture that interview. And it's actually a thing of beauty. And the one thing I want to share with you is Joe was always the guy behind the camera, whether it was Dominic DeNucci or Jimmy Superfly Snuka's last real interview as being the Superfly. And on each of these occasions, he gave these gentlemen dignity and made sure that what was posted on them was always the best. And so the only interview done with Tamina Snuka at WrestleMania was done by our organization. We beat out Fox, CBS, NBC. Those of us who were there, Kevin knows this to be the truth. We were there in front of the executives. They said, okay, who's it going to be? And they said, JPI TV, because we've been doing the best interviews all day long. We had no business. I also learned that day I could never, against all the dreams I ever had, I could never be an interviewer for professional wrestling. And it broke my heart because I was much bigger than all of the wrestlers. So, anyway, we recorded that Dominic DeNucci interview. That put us on a mailing list, back when mailing lists were a real thing. And one day we found out Rocky Johnson is going to be in Amsterdam, New York in September of 2013. And I said, Joe, let's head out there. So we took our daughters. Ginger was there for this. My daughter Angelina and Juliana. Joe's father-in-law and my mother. We all went out to Amsterdam, New York. We were given 10 minutes to shoot an interview. We only met Rocky Johnson for that 10 minutes. He then went back to Florida and wanted to know who we were. I was in the middle of a fire drill in Saugerties, New York. I got thousands of kids coming out of the high school. My phone is ringing. It's Rocky Johnson. He wants us to go to Florida because he wants us to start to chronicle his life. So Joe and I have now been from Toronto, where we saw Sweet Daddy Siki, or we would talk with the Destroyer, or we would be in New Jersey, where it was the Acclaimed, but they weren't the Acclaimed at that point. Or we sat at a table, imagine this, with Ivan Koloff and Rocky Johnson and the Goon and Tony Atlas. Oh, and Tony Atlas. The only time I saw Joe Defino get scared was when Tony Atlas said he's got real pretty eyes.
In an elevator.
And you may not know a lot of things about Tony Atlas, but that gentleman can quote the Bible scripture verbatim. And we saw it in one of the scariest moments of my life. You're in a locker room in an independent pro wrestling, and he decides to go around the room and ask everyone there, do you believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior? And there was only one right answer. Until we saw the guy who said, I'm an atheist. That's when things went real wacky. But folks, I hit upon it. It was when we were cutting the actual ribbon for this establishment, Joe was here. He showed up on that Thursday in August to go over what we needed to do to be prepared, because we had Dory Funk Jr. and Ted DiBiase and Booker T and Bushwhacker Luke, and we had all kinds of people coming. So Joe needed to know what were we going to do. He then had a doctor's appointment that day, and then that Friday, while we were here doing our ribbon cutting, Joe had to go for an MRI. And then that Saturday, when we were doing our induction, Joe was diagnosed with having brain cancer. So I asked him to go home and be with his family. He said, no, I'm gonna be here, and we're gonna open this museum, and we're gonna have a great time. And we're here today because of the medal that was demonstrated by Mr. Joe Defino. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to Joe Defino. Before we go further, Mick, if we could take down this belt, we're gonna need that. And before we go any further, why don't you, and I believe, oh, there's a marker here. Folks, by the way, you should get a picture. Mick was here when we first opened this museum before anything else went up. Get a picture of Mick in front of the picture of Mick hanging up the first bronze plaque, because behind that bronze plaque is a secret message that he wrote just to Terry Funk. So why don't we all sit here while Mick writes a little secret message to Joe, okay? And in the meantime, if Brian Liston could come on up, because Brian's going to be doing a poem. And so
And where do I write it?
We
Okay.
have a plaque right here for you, Mick.
All right.
You'll take a minute and do that, and we're gonna have Brian Liston come on up and do his poem.
Joe, you
J-O-E.
have such pretty eyes.
We'll go back to you in a minute.
If I could at least add something to that, Seth. I've actually known Joe for 30 years when he was a teacher too, so I had to go there. And I will tell you, I have to preface this just for this, that when it comes to being a person of integrity, of character, and of compassion for his community, there's no one better than Joe Defino Jr., gotta say. Other than his father-in-law. So with that in mind, Forge, for Joe Defino and his family. Weary fighter, feels disheartened, wins feel as rare as scars, defeats pile up on a daily basis. Looking at lights seems natural as depression sets in. Positives seem distant inside his inner storm. Suddenly, light, hope, shines forth as voice helps you see, feel the good you bring to him, to others. With him, all things can, will be done with torch of light, hope, friendship, knowing that we can overcome what the dark brings.
Thank you. And Brian, if you would please share that with the entire International Professional Wrestling Organization group. We would love to read that. Thank you. All right. So Joe, would you come on up and you and Mick can hang the plaque?
Where does it go? Oh, it goes there.
We've got a spot right there.
Okay,
So
Joe, do you want to hang it?
I will, no, I'll drop it.
Okay. All right. I better put my glasses on. Hold on.
no, let me.
I get it?
Looks like,
There we go.
Folks, a big round of applause. Mick, would you make Joe our official champion?
Surround you. There we go.
And for one final move, and then I'll turn it over to you, Mick, we will present to Joe the actual Medal of Metal. Joe, why don't you? Yeah, it's not easy for somebody with fingers the size of sausages. And I can't see so good. And at this time, actually, we have a performance. So Mick, if you want to take a seat, Joe, take a seat, and let's invite up from SUNY Cortland, Kevin McLaren. Joe, he needs that chair. 1 second.
So I can sit on this one.
Yes, you can get the Dory Funk one. In fact, Dory will be happy that you have that.
I need,
The chair?
I'm a pain in the ass, I know it. I need a chair, I gotta put the lyrics on that.
Those lyrics?
I don't think we've thought this all through that much.
Yeah, Seth asked me, I think he asked me, I probably volunteered for this. You know, bear with me, there's a million references I could have brought in. So I tried to keep it to a couple minutes. All right. Doesn't matter the form, there are baskets to fill. Looking to cut down the nets and settle the bill. Whether living after midnight or soul to soul, for every candy or sue you got a heart of gold. You show us how, what you do and say, how together we make a difference every day. Up at 10 or 11, whatever works today. But why only have 10 when 11 is more, they say. No matter if your hand's reaching out or feet jump to the pad, when others say it's enough, you say, how can I add? You show us how, what you do and say, how together we make a difference every day. Whether it's JWP or JPI, you fill up the journal and look towards the sky. Be a circle or be square, they all fit in the frame. You can start at 0, but the answer's the same. Almost done. You show us how, sing along with me. What you do and say, how together we make a difference every day. Never dodging the ball, afraid of the top row. Always grabbing the flag and rocking the boat. 417 250, never keeping score. always there looking lean. Don't know the word, no, and there's a soul in me. So congratulations, my friend. Though you never ask for praise, faith and hope need rewarding more and more these days. Thank you.
Kevin, that was absolutely beautiful. Again, big round of applause for Kevin McLaren. Kevin, who's done accompaniment on Mick's comedy tour. We've it's been nice to see that.
Better ride.
You might have noticed that this steel chair posse, well, we've got this one particularly autographed by none other than Mick Foley, so it's not just used as a music stand, it has a purpose. So before you leave, if you stop back and see Andy back there, because we're selling t-shirts, or if you want to make a donation, and who knows, maybe someone makes a nice donation, we might make you part of our steel chair posse. But there is a caveat: Mick gets to hit you over the head with it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have Mick Foley come on and say just a few words.
There we go. Hey, thank you. I'm really delighted to be here. The gentleman came up and read the poem, said he'd known Joe for 30 years, which as far as being a wrestler and wrestling fan, as soon as I hear the phrase 30 years, I think of Dusty Rhodes in the Hard Times promo going, 30 years, 30 years. Well, 30 is important, but I have known Joe even longer, 38 years. I was just thinking while Kevin was playing that I was in a sense like a floundering C student with really no ambition. And then three things happened to me that changed the course of my college life and my entire life. That was WSUC, the local radio station. I started doing sports on there. I found professional wrestling, and Joe Defino saw enough in me to put me on his crew for Sports Journal. 7 Valley News, right? And it was sometimes in life, all you need is that one person to see something in you. And within a year's time, I had been transformed from the C student with no ambition to the winner of the prestigious Ann Allen Award for Outstanding Student in my major. Following, so I was the third winner, Joe was the second winner, and Seth was telling me the first winner is a notable person as well. Who won the first Ann Allen Award?
Dominic Carter,
Dominic-
WABC Radio.
Dominic Carter, ABC Radio. So I want you to fully appreciate the magnitude of this award before I tell you there were only 12 students in my major. What was wonderful about being a communications major in what was basically a teaching school, phys ed and general education, is that we became a really close-knit group of people, that we were in several of the same classes together. And I mean this with all due respect, and that's the northern way of saying bless his heart. Something bad's about to follow, but Joe kind of invited me in, and I appreciated being what I will call very fondly like my nerd crew. And like we were into telling stories through, they actually called it ENG, electronic news gathering, before everyone had a phone. We'd actually go out on assignments, and at that time, I don't think I probably am dating myself, but some of you up there are the same age as I am. You had to have a camera that weighed about 10 pounds over one shoulder, an actual VCR slung around another shoulder that weighed about 15 pounds, And because each battery only lasted about a minute, you would have something resembling Batman's utility belt around your waist, and that's the way we gathered the news. I still my new utility belt. We put this together. I thank you, Seth, for arranging this around my schedule. He told me he'd be really great if I could make it, and I said, well, I'm going to be in Canada. That's close enough, right? That's a 6-hour drive, which is honestly, a very short distance to come and honor someone like Joe. Joe had made that trip from Saugerties to my home on Long Island on many occasions, came down to video my one-man show when it was still really in the feeling out process, always with a box of Krause's candy in it. And I can't, just a great friend, 38 years down the road, and we're still keeping in touch. He's a great man. I did come down and did the dodgeball tournament, right? Free of charge. It was free of charge, right? A box of candy is all it cost to get me there. And one of the things that I really appreciate about what Joe and Seth have done here is that this is a real place. You know, I mean, I'm honored to be in the WWE Hall of Fame, but there's no place. There's a warehouse that one day may be a place. And I think I've been asked to keep it secret by my friends at A&E and WWE, but I'm one of the hosts of the new season of Most Wanted Treasures, and I've, along with Lita, we've scoured the country, literally the country, to find these priceless treasures. And after working on that for 8 months, I walk in these doors and you've got more treasures than we found. Yeah, it's great. And I also asked Seth about the response here. I said, I'm guessing you've probably had more visitors here to see the hall in 1 year. How long have you been open?
It's August, so only since August, so
Since August.
7 months.
So in 7 months, they've seen more visitors than the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame had in Texas in 10 years, and the Hall of Fame in Amsterdam before that combined. So it's wonderful that you guys have put something together that is a tribute to wrestling history, that people from all walks of life who come into this arena, whether they're here for a Springsteen concert, a WWE show, an AEW show, monster truck show, they all come wandering in and they take it in and they love it. I'm guessing Bill Eadie's not going to be too happy with that model there. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to take a photo and show it to Bill. I'd be honored if you used that model for my stuff. But I want to, do I have the honor to introduce Joe up here? How many of you have been to college or high school? Like, you can count on one hand the number of people you keep in touch with after almost 40 years. And I'm so proud that Joe is one of those fingers on my hand. He's one of the guys that I hold dearest as a friend, always been there for me, and that's just his way. He's there for his community, he's here for professional wrestling, and today he's here for you. So may I welcome to the microphone my dear friend, Mr. Joe Defino.
Dangerous thing right here. Microphone and me.
Need a timer?
No, Judy's up
Just set
front, can't
time.
give me that. But if I run out of things to say, I got my dad. I got Ralph Longendijk. There he is. And we've got Bob Seracasano. So ladies and gentlemen, we plan to be here all day. I want to welcome Albany County Executive, Mr. Dan McCoy. He's right over by the door. If we can give him a round of applause. Dan McCoy is instrumental in bringing the Hall of Fame to the MVP arena, and without him, this would not be here. It would be an empty space. But it is a moving not only exhibit, but a testimony to the world of professional wrestling. And so Dan, thank you for giving us this opportunity. And let us not forget, we are at the International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, the MVP Arena, right here in Albany, New York.
That's your thumb up.
Couple of things I want to say. I did have a script to follow. I don't have that, so that's dangerous. So any omissions, any stuttering, I blew it. I didn't write it out. Did not print it out. But in any case, you're going to get what you get. Now, as I'm listening to all these tributes, I'm thinking, wow, this must be what it's like to attend your own funeral. So I want to thank you for coming to my funeral, for being here and saying these nice things. And it's not too many times that a person gets to tell the people that they love and the people that are so important to where they are and what they become, thank you. Because each one of you here has played an instrumental and important role in what you see before you. You also have to take the blame for it.
He's looking right at me.
So the work that was done to put this together, whether it was the coordination of the invitations and bringing the people here like Mick and all of you here today, was done by Mr. Seth Turner. Coordinated by his lovely wife, Lora. And my lovely wife, Judy. Who Mick on numerous occasions would say, Joe, I see you married out of your league too. Mick's married to a model, Colette. And just beautiful, beautiful people. I am so thankful for the friendships that we've developed through the years with each of you. And again, what an honor it is, not just to be here and the recipient of this award and to represent Rocky Johnson, the International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, right here, the MVP Arena in Albany, New York. By the way, you can follow all of the things going on here at the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame by logging on to prowrestlinghall.org. Follow us on Facebook, become benefactors, because this is all volunteer staffed, and we rely on donations and the goodness of your hearts to help keep this moving forward. So if you're looking for a place to donate a few bucks, prowrestlinghall.org. All right, so I got the hard part out of the way, I think. All right, why is Mick Foley the perfect person to be here for the Mettle of Mettle? Now, I may have to get my phone out for this. And it's because of the connection that he has with the Johnson family, with Rocky Johnson and his family. And there's a phrase, 6 degrees of separation, and it applies perfectly here. If you have not yet purchased any book by the 2-time New York Times #1 best-selling author, do so immediately. Whether it is his autobiographies. I don't know too many people that have written one autobiography. Mick has written 4 or 5. 5, yes. Santa Claus, yeah. So, and 2 of them were #1 New York Times bestsellers. 2 of them, not just 1, 2. If you don't have them, get them. Get them. You'll get a fuller appreciation for this lovely, wonderful human being that is.
Lovely's not a good adjective.
Well, if you look him up on Google and check out, you know, some of the things that he's done, you'll see a lot of the write-ups that he gets are things that he's accomplished outside of the ring, not necessarily in the ring. What he's accomplished in the ring, you really need to have a steady stomach, and you need to be able to get up and leave the room now and again. It is quite disturbing, but yet it has changed pro wrestling, I would say, for the better. All right, so Rocky Johnson, I'm going to give just a little bit of a background. Again, these are historic things that Rocky, people and accomplishments that fit into his life story, and I'm going to compare them to Mick, and they will come together, and then you'll see why Mick is the perfect person to be here representing the Rocky Johnson Medal of Mettle Award. Rocky Johnson, John Wayne, Sammy Davis Jr. Mick Foley, Joe DiMaggio, Marilyn Monroe. You've read his books, that will make a little bit of sense. Rocky Johnson, George Jones, Elvis Presley. Mick Foley, Nora Jones, Tori Amos. Rocky Johnson, Miss Mavis. Mick Foley, Minnie Tonka. And Bill Murray. Rocky Johnson, George Foreman, Muhammad Ali. Mick Foley, Reggie Jackson, and George M. Steinbrenner.
George Foreman wrote.
Rocky Johnson, Barack Obama, and Joseph R. Biden. Mick Foley, George W. Bush, Donald J. Trump. Rocky Johnson, Jimmy Snuka. Mick Foley, Don the Rock Morocco. Rocky Johnson, 2008 WWE Hall of Fame. Mick Foley, 2013 WWE Hall of Fame. Rocky Johnson, Golden Corral, and the golden era of pro wrestling. Mick Foley, Denny's, and the Attitude Era of professional wrestling. Rocky Johnson, Dewey Johnson. Mick Foley, Dewey Foley.
It's his birthday today.
All right, happy birthday, Dewey Foley.
Thank you for that smattering of applause.
King Dewey.
Mick Foley, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I think one of Mick's most influential or impactful contributions to society is Santa Claus. Whether you know it or not, Mick takes on the role of Santa Claus, and I'm sure his wife Colette loves when August rolls around and he starts growing the beard and dyeing his beard, because it needs to be a specific color, right?
Yes.
And then Mick Bob, you'll love this. Bob Santa will love it. And then Mick will spend November, December, and some of January on his own dime going around the country, sometimes around the world, to hospitals and places where there are sick people or people that need their spirits boosted, and he will go as Santa Claus and bring the magic of Christmas to them. And if you want, when you do your deep dive on his reading, or his books that he's written, do a deep dive on YouTube, and you will see Mick as Santa Claus. And you will know, not only, he doesn't play Santa Claus, he becomes Santa Claus. And every detail matters. And it's something, again, you know, when you look at your friends and you see how they contribute to their community, Mick contributes to the world, it just makes you so proud to know them.
All right.
2 o'clock, time for my medication, Julie. Is it?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Mick?
Yes.
You're not, your right ear is, your left ear is.
I got the left ear towards you, yeah. I'm good.
Thank you very much. I was hoping that would work out. All right, I'm wrapping it up.
Good, I was about to get the,
All right, I stand here as well, representing Azalea Farkas and Drew Hale, previous recipients of the Rocky Johnson Medal of Mettle. And I have to say, you know, through my journey, I've thought of them often, I've thought of Mick often. You know, though I didn't suffer the same head injuries that Mick has endured, there was definitely head trauma that made things a little similar. You know, I'm very, very much cloudy in my thoughts, a little slow in my ability to convey my thoughts, slow in my ability to move around. And, you know, when that happened, and it happened so quickly, I often thought of my good friend here and what he endured for the fans of pro wrestling, and you know, how many times he would end up in the hospital and be feeling the same way, and he did it for us, for the fans, so that they could get something that they could say, wow, I never saw something like that before, or wow, I'm so glad I tuned in, or wow, I'm so glad I purchased that ticket. You have something sparkly in your hair. Oh, it's a thumbtack. A thumbtack. Somehow, this thumbtack did not get cleaned up by Dave Dole and Nick Dole.
Put that up here on the wall. It's a special thumbtack.
And again, when you do your deep dive on Mick, you will see the thumbtack has a very important significance. And he did that to not only for fans, but he did that to get other wrestlers over. Now, getting somebody over is to endear them more to the fans and to the company itself. And the pain that he took on and the ideas that he had, let's try this, let's try that. And Vince McMahon saying no, 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 no. And him convincing him that, you know, 10,000 thumbtacks on the surface of the ring is a good idea. It's a good idea. I asked him earlier if there were any ideas that rattled around in his head for a couple of days, like thumbtacks or being body slammed off of a 19-foot steel cage onto an announce table. or buried alive, or having his face raked over with barbed wire on a 4x8 sheet of plywood, or, you know, wrestling in a match that has explosives on it. If those were good ideas. If any of those ideas had ever rattled around his head after a couple of days, he said, you know, I don't think this is a good idea. I'm not gonna try it. And I always thought about this as well, you know, his wife at home. Don't do anything stupid. Don't worry, honey. All good. And it was a good thing when he called home after the match and he was in the locker room, or he was in his car or his hotel room instead of in a hospital room. So, Mick, thank you for all those memories.
Welcome. Thanks, Joe. Good times.
I'm gonna close with this. I stand here because of you. I would not be here without you allowing me to become who I am. In other words, like I said before, I blame you. Thank you. And again, like a funeral, this is my opportunity to tell you all I love you. And without your prayers, your thoughts, your good will toward me during a very difficult time, I would not be here. And I certainly would not be standing here. I would be on my back, like Brian Gordon saw me, with a white beard, probably falling asleep. Yeah. That being said, I'd like to ask all of us here to take a moment to share a positive thought, energy, and prayers for someone who is in need as they are struggling. It may be a loved one who's going through a tough time. It may be something that you are facing. If you can't think of anyone, there are millions of kids and young people who are in desperate need of support. The addicted and the afflicted and their families are, unfortunately, always in need. I will continue to lift each of you up, and with deep humility and gratitude, ask you to continue to do the same for me. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause again for Mr. Joe Defino. All right, for housekeeping, I want to go over a few things. Lora, you can stop the video for one